Next space warp that we're going to play with is the Displace space warp. This space warp is fairly useful for creating terrains or faces or even just odd shapes. How it works is we basically draw out a rectangle using the display tool. We can change some of the settings at this point. We can even apply bitmap images and so on. But I just want to explain how the command works. This particular space warp doesn't affect particle systems. It actually affects mesh objects like the one I've got in the background here. Now what I've done here is I've just made a planar object, divided it up 24 by 24, and then using the right mouse button I've converted it to an editable mesh. I've done this because this particular space warp modifier needs an editable mesh to work on. So once we've got both the Displace space warp and the editable mesh, we then link the two together using the space warp linkage tool, or the bind space warp. Now that we've done that, we can go and modify the space warp in the modify palette. I'll just maximize the perspective view here. We can change its strength, and as I do that you can see that the space warp is affecting the mesh by extruding its pattern up out of the mesh. We can modify the decay, and that just changes the sharpness of the space warp modifier. And then that's not really the effect I was chasing. I might want something that looks very mountainous. So what we do to do this is we attach a bitmap. So we go off and we find a bitmap. I'm just going to go to my maps directory. We find a bitmap that we're chasing. And we apply that. And now you can see that I'm starting to get almost a mountainous looking environment. Now how this works is it works on the number of vertices within the mesh. So the finer the mesh, the finer the pattern will be in the displacement. We can change different type of mapping coordinates and so on. I just would leave it at planar unless you're affecting a sphere or a cylinder. We can change how it's behaving. Again, we can manipulate the decay. So that's all there basically is to the Displace. I recommend having a fairly decent play with it because you can get some very decent results.